Today I'm going to change the oil on my air compressor. This is an SGS 50 litre 3 horsepower model. It's exactly the same as a lot of the Clarke air compressors, Airmaster and various other brands who rebrand the same model. The chances are your compressor is going to be slightly different from this one, but the principles are almost certainly going to be the same. The main thing that's going to change is the position of the sump plug, but you'll probably find it anyway. And obviously it's not valid for oil-free compressors. The first thing to do before you start is to electrically isolate the compressor and drain it of all of its air. Ideally you'd drain the majority of the pressure just by using the tools in your day-to-day use, but then I'd recommend finishing the draining by using the drain plug at the bottom of the tank. So it's good practice to use that drain plug whether you're changing the oil or not, just to get the moisture out of the tank. A lot of the older compressors had a ring pull on the safety relief valve, and I'm told that people would often drain the tank through that safety relief valve because it was quite easy just to pull it and let the air out. That would lead to damage to the relief valve. Usually the failure was failing safe because it would relieve the pressure early on, but the modern ones don't tend to have them. It's probably some sort of legislation which has banned it. So I'm going to drain my tank and then go ahead with the oil change. Right, the air's out of it, so it's now ready to be drained of oil. There's varying advice online for how often you should do this oil change, but the common theme is that the first change seems to be the most important, and that's recommended after usually between 8 and 10 hours of running. I'm guessing that's because these aren't pre-running, so when you first run, maybe you get a bit more metal wear, which degrades the oil a bit quicker. First one between 8 and 10 hours, and then after that every 20 to 30 hours of running. So on my compressor, the oil sump is connected to the sight glass. Before you start draining the oil, you need to make sure you've got the right oil to fill it back up with. So I'm going to use this compressor oil. Generally they're all the same standard, but don't get the compressor oil confused with the airline oil. So this is what goes into your air tools, or an air inline oiler if you've got it. This is the one to fill it up with. To drain it, I'm going to just use a normal oil sump. And because the plug is in quite an awkward place, I've got one of these flexible funnel type things. You could just use tin foil or something like that. I'm going to try and shove it under there, get the sump plug out. Mine uses a 24mm spanner. You could probably use an adjustable or something like that if you wanted as well. Generally speaking with this sort of thing, the darker the oil, the more it needs to be changed. This has gone fairly black, but it's not too bad. Because the motor cuts in and out and you don't really keep track of time, it's quite hard to know what the running hours are on something like this, whereas with a car at least you know how many miles it's done and things like that. But yeah, there's not much oil in there and it's quite cheap to change, worthwhile doing. So once it stops running, you'll probably need to just tip it up to make sure you empty the sump, because it, like I said, it's not actually right on the bottom of the casing. Once that's empty, just refit the sump plug. I like to smear a bit of clean oil just onto the seal, just to make sure it seals nicely. I couldn't find a torque rating anywhere for this fastener, so I'm just going to do it hand tight up and keep an eye on it when I first run it. It's not going to be under any pressure, so it doesn't really matter all that much as long as you keep an eye on it. Right, that feels about right. Then, as you'd expect, just fill it up again. So I'll get a close-up of the sump in a minute. It's just got a red dot in the middle of it, and as long as the oil line is within that red dot, you're fine. I don't know how much you actually put in here, but it's not very much. So go slowly. Hopefully you can see there, but the oil is just up to the top of the red dot. So just the first couple of times you're running it, just keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't go down, just in case it has to, in case it settles in some different areas or something like that. But so just keep an eye on it for leaks and any changes in level. So that's all you have to do. easy job, but one that's easy to forget about, and definitely well worth doing to prolong the life of your equipment.